Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we just finished, I almost said finished. That would have been quite the word, as in not a word. But we just finished putting our communication satellite in orbit over Gilly, and that is of course in process for getting our actual base set up. But I want to set up this base a little bit differently than the Moon and Minmus bases. With those, we launched into orbit, and then we used a landing device to land it on the Moon and Minmus, and then docked it up on the surface. I'd kind of like to assemble this one in orbit of Kerbal, I feel like. And then, well, actually, let's check our contracts. Let me see what we've got here. Well, these are all not relevant to us, so that's fine. Explore Eve. Performing a spacewalk in orbit. That's easy enough to do. Plant a flag on Gilly. Yes. Science data from space around Gilly. We can actually do that literally right now. And let's see here. Right. It must be on motorized wheels. Sure. Okay. That's all fine as well. We don't actually need and plant a flag on Eve. That one's going to be exciting. But for now, that'll all be fine. That'll all be fine. So let's hop into our tracking station. Let's finish that science data from space around Gilly right now, since we can do that. We can also untrack our debris here. There we go. Okay, let's load this on in. Okay, cool. So once this gets loaded in, all we're going to need to do is grab our thermometer here. This has so much extra delta V in it. We're just going to log this temperature, and we'll transmit this back once we have a connection, which we currently don't due to our position here. So you can see Kerbal is occluded right now. But if we were to warp to about here, it's just at 1x. That's exciting. Okay, I'm not sure why it's warping at 1x, but sure. We'll just manually warp it. There, now we have a connection. We can get rid of this, and we can transmit this data. There we go. And there is our contract complete. Fantastic. So let's head on back to the Space Center. And as I was saying, I'd like to assemble this one in orbit around Kerbal, and then send the whole thing over. That's going to be heavy. Very heavy. But we're not going to need as much landing apparatus, I think. So, we're still going to lift it piecemeal and then assemble it in Kerbal orbit. It will need these struts put together for sure, and then we'll need enough propulsion to actually send it over. And the question is, how much propulsion are we going to need for that? The answer is probably a lot. What is this? Is this a RA-15? We should probably consider upgrading this at this point to an RA-100 now that we have access to it. Is it bigger? Yes. Yes, it is. We'll delete our fairing here and we'll rebuild it. We're going to need a slightly larger fairing here, actually. Right. So let's just get out of that mode. We've got this Protobodyne hex here. I think I want to overhaul this top area entirely. Okay. I would like... I'm just thinking here. We can get rid of the Protobodyne hex, and we can replace that with an upgraded system. That's definitely something that we can do. We want to go into our pods, and then go for a remote guidance unit of some type. That's too big. Probably a standard remote guidance unit, like that. So that way we're not blocking our top window. I'd prefer not to block our top window. And from here, we can grab... I don't want to build the fairing. We can grab this. We can ditch the fairing for the moment. And then we can put this back on, and we can ditch the Protobodyne hex. So now we have our relay antenna here, right? I'm not convinced that it will survive an ascent. I'm especially not convinced it will survive an ascent over here. Over here, it would, of course, throw our center of mass off. But that's maybe okay. Now, we know that this needs to be on motorized wheels, so we can ditch our landing legs for here, and for the purposes of the contract, we can replace those with, like, rope maxes, although this is going to be really awkward Maybe we need, like, these guys. Even that's going to be awkward. Thinking about how this is set up here, this is all radial. And so this would be good at spinning. Not really good at traveling. Maybe that's okay. Maybe that'll help our braking maneuvers. If we were to do something like this. But I'd like it to be lower, of course. It's going to have to be quite a lot lower. So we're going to put on our... what do we want? Robotics. We want to put on a 1P2 hydraulic cylinder down below here. Something kind of like that. And then we're going to do a cubic octagonal strut here. There we go. And I'd like to get that rotation a little bit different. There we go. That's approximately the correct rotation. And then we move our Rove Maxes to be down here. Now, is that still not high enough? Well, we can always have this be extended out. That's definitely high enough. So that should be fine, and we can extend the hydraulic cylinders on our others if we need to, but we're going to dock it up in space, right? So it should be okay. So will this fuel be enough for landing us on Gilly? That's an interesting question, and I think that we need to make some alterations to the overall plan that we have here. We ditch our decoupler here. And we also probably end up ditching this engine. And then we have the separate landing components. Those landing components will likely be on the existing modules, not on this module. But I want the ability to get additional fuel into here, if need be. So we are going to put on a docking port here. So like a grande size docking port? No, that's a little too much. A docking port senior is about right. So we need to get this docked together. I can't remember which way is which on these things. I think it's the other way. I think it goes like this. But I'm not 100% sure. We'll have to test that. And then this would simply go in like that. So that would be docked together. And then we would want to strut that just to add a little bit of rigidity. So we'll go ahead and do so. We'll strut that together about like so. That did not quite go the way I wanted it to. Yeah, it doesn't want to do that. Get back on there. There you go. Cool. So we'd go from like here. We could just connect it, honestly. We could connect it here up to here. That should be fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this for the time being. This is going to require additional work to make the necessary modifications, but we're going to... Actually, I'm going to save this as the colony core, and this is going to be the... I was going to call it like the Gilly version, but this is really more the low gravity, no atmosphere version. So the... We'll call this the VLG and LGNA. VLGNA. Perfect. So we'll save that and launch it. I know I overwrote the other one. It's fine. We'll be able to modify that for setting up on the surface. We're probably going to do similar deliveries for atmospheric bodies as we have on Moon and Minmus, I think. That said, that's a little tougher for us because we don't necessarily have a huge amount of control over where we're going to land when aerobraking. Or at least I don't, because I'm bad at that. Okay, so I want to undock this. And I just want to make sure we do indeed appear to be undocked. Okay, control from here. Set as target. Can we dock it back up? We don't appear to be docking, but it's possible that it's just not, like KSP wouldn't do this anyway. Let's go ahead and, well, we would need like some sort of SAS, or rather some sort of reaction control system on this. Indeed. I was hoping that this would just automatically dock back up and be a proof of concept. Regardless, we know that it was originally docked and we were able to undock, so it should work. So we'll revert that back to the vehicle assembly, and the plan here is that we've got this initial booster, right? This initial booster should be more than sufficient, actually, to deliver it to Kerbal orbit. So what I was thinking was this would deliver it to low Kerbal orbit, and then we would undock this. We could even send this up unfueled. So we do that, we undock this, we transfer up as much fuel as we can, and then we send up a second transfer stage with a higher specific impulse engine. I think that's what we end up doing. And then that will go there, centered on the station. The only question I have now is, does this relay antenna survive the ascent? It's reasonably delicate. I wonder, could we store it in the hitchhiker storage container? No, that's a construction only part. Okay. So that's good to know. So we'll just put that back there. We can't stow that away. We could theoretically... Hang on. Could we get this inside of a payload bay? Like an SM-25 service module. I think that's probably too narrow. Yeah, it's too narrow. Okay. It's an interesting question, though. So an SM-18 would be that size. This is a 2.5 meter service bay. That's too short. And too narrow. So we know that that's not really going to work. That service module is too small. Okay. Noted. We could send it up inside of a fairing like this, just to protect it, and then change its position later. This is an option. So it would be something kind of like this, right? And then we'd have to ditch the fairing, and then move this over to be, like, side-mounted. It's an option. I don't think it's a great option. I would much prefer to just have it be side-mounted, if it survives. If it does not survive, we can bring it up on a different module that is going to have a fairing. We can do that. So we can try this, and if it survives, great. If it doesn't survive, that's okay. I do want to make sure that we have a good amount of struts in here. We're going to need a number of them, and we want to make sure that we've got them. Struts and repair kits. Well, we may need the repair kits. We'll see. So let's go ahead and put in under our structural. Let's put in a few struts here. So 3 and 4. I wish that you could duplicate these stacks. That'd be really nice if you could just like alt-click them to, or control-click them to duplicate the stack, or shift-click or something. Sadly, as far as I know, there's no way to do that. But I'm going to bring up 4 stacks of strut connectors. We shouldn't need this many. We're bringing some spares along. And we'll bring up some repair kits as well. So, let's see. Those are under cargo. Yes. And we'll have some other repair kits as well, but this should be just fine. We're going to bring up, again, we're going to bring up 16 repair kits as well. Cool. And then as far as who we're going to bring in this, we do not need a pilot. We need an engineer, and we eventually need a scientist, but now is maybe not the time that we need that. So our engineer is going to be... Well, Bill is our only option. Okay, we're going to need to hire more engineers. So let's hop out of here. And we know that our engineers are not currently going to be capable of repair work. We shouldn't really need it, to be honest. Putting this thing together in space should be completely fine. We're going to be ditching a lot of the weight that is in... This is not where we wanted to be. We're going to be ditching a lot of the weight that is currently in our landing systems. And we've got Kimken Kerman here. Okay. And we've also got Paulo here. We'll go ahead and hire both of them. Cool. Now we're going to need to get them some experience at some point. Or simply bring them back. We might want to bring them back at some point as well. Let's just go ahead and bring both KimCam and Paulo here. Well, they're just going to orbit. Orbit around Kerbal is worth 2 XP. I think that's not enough to level them. Okay, well, let's go ahead and bring both KimCam and Paulo. Well, I'm only going to bring one. Milnerd and KimCam will be the ones that go here. So let's go ahead and save this and launch it. I'm a little concerned about the lack of fairing here. But let's see what we've got. Hopefully our wheels survive. Hopefully the antenna survives. We're going to try to go up more than we are sideways. We want to avoid a large section of the atmosphere here since we've got some unprotected parts. I think that's pretty clear. So let's throttle up, SAS on. This is a pretty light module because we have... Oh, I thought we took the fuel out of here. I swear we took this fuel out. Let's revert that back to the vehicle assembly. Maybe I didn't save that for whatever reason. But let's take that fuel out. This should not be here. We want that fuel gone. We will refuel this later. Or more likely pull the fuel out of the Rockomax jumbo tanks here. Double checking crew, that looks good. And then as far as our actual staging goes, it's very, very simple. All we're doing is delivering this to orbit. So that should be no real problem. And we're going to have to do a little bit of reworking on each of our modules to remove fuel from them and just overall lighten them. Since we don't have to land them individually, they will all be landed together. It should be much better, and honestly, we're going to have too much thrust to weight ratio as it is right now, I suspect, at least over Gilly. So let's go ahead and SAS on, and off we go. We're going to go up much more aggressively than we have in the past, because we want to get through the atmosphere before we start going really fast. So I'm not going to start our gravity turn here until like 150 meters per second. It's very late. Okay. We've drifted off a little bit, but it is correctable. Cool. And we'll park up here for the time being. There we go. Let's go ahead and lock prograde here. We're going to have to go very horizontal. Actually, I'm not locking prograde quite yet. I'm wanting... Okay, we need to lock prograde. We want to go very, very vertical here, but we're going to have to go very horizontal later. That'll be a manual change, and this is not a super efficient flight trajectory, but that's okay. We're more prioritizing keeping the heating off of these components right now. As you can see, we're looking to go very high in our apoapsis here. And I'm trying to keep us at a 90-degree heading here. We are trying to pull down a little bit. I think that's probably due to some wacky drag. But okay, there we go. Our apoapsis is already super, super high. Okay, we just switched over into orbital mode. And we're going to detach those. And now, we already need to head over to the horizon. There we go. We're at an apoapsis height of 175. Like I said, really, really high. We knew that that would be the case. So we're going to assemble this at, I think, 200 kilometers. That'll be fine. Let's keep burning here for a little bit. We are in space now. Okay, 200 kilometers. And let's go ahead and extend our solar panels. We don't have much for solar panels here, but that's fine. Cool. And we will go ahead and circularize this. Excellent. This'll do. We're in basically exactly the same orbit as our multi-satellite machine. I like it. We won't have a hard time intercepting this. It'll be absolutely fine. Okay. So we are getting some electric charge here. I think. Where is the sun right now? Sun is right there. Okay, this is not an ideal location for the sun for our solar panels, but it'll do. It'll do. Let's go ahead and warp on forward and get ourselves into orbit here, and then we'll start assembling this thing eventually. So I think next we'll send up our... It doesn't matter what order we send them in, actually. Our science module is going to be pretty late to the party. And we definitely have a lot of extra fuel in this. There's no doubt about that. We're going to transfer all of it that we can into our X232 as soon as we are done with this burn. And then we'll probably look to store additional of this fuel elsewhere before we bring up the finalized module for this. But we do need to burn quite a lot to get into orbit here. So that's fine. We knew that would be the case with how vertical our trajectory was. Cool. Keep in mind, this can store 25% of what this can. So we'll see how much fuel we have left here. That's good enough. This orbit will do. Okay, let's go ahead and pin this guy open, and then these guys... Oh, hang on. Stop it. Stop it. I hit the wrong button there, but we're good. Okay. Let's just go to retrograde for now. It doesn't actually matter. Let's go to stability assist. We'll pin these open. Cool. And we'll move that fuel on up. Or some of it, anyway. We're not going to move all of it, but this is fine. So this is the fuel that we're going to land on. We're not going to have any additional fuel for landing other than what's in this tank here. We are, well, maybe a tiny amount, but this should be more than enough to land on Gilly. Like, way more than enough. That should be wildly overkill. The main thing that we don't have right now is a high specific impulse engine to dock up here. And that will come with its own fuel tank. So a high specific impulse engine here that will be responsible for getting us to Gilly. And then our modules out here will still have some of their landing parts that will be responsible for landing us on Gilly. That's the idea. However, as I'm thinking about that, I'm realizing some of those parts, like, they're optimized currently for the mass distribution of the module. They're not optimized for the mass distribution of the entire station. So that's going to be an interesting wrinkle there. We're going to disable crossfeed here. For now, we don't want, or actually we never want any crossfeed here. We want this to remain untouched. So that'll be fine. We've got 724 meters per second left here. And we'll see what we want to end up doing with that. We might transfer that into another part at some point, but we need to get started assembling our colony here. I'm glad that all of this survived. It looks good. Fantastic. Of course, we have no way to move this once we undock. We will fix that. It is, however, time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we are going to continue our construction of our Gilly colony in the orbit of Kerbal. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including Casserole, ALS Gamer, Kentuin, James, Shadowwolf, MLohan80, Kentogan, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Kadra, Unisoul, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button, down below the video. And as always, I will see you all next time.